Howdy, YouTube. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I am your host, Bill Whittle, and it is the 8th of January. Bowling was great. Had a great time. Bowled a couple of 300 games. Um, it's not unusual for me. I developed a cannon and a kind of an optically guided pin-seeking warhead that mounts on the bowling ball. So I've broken all kinds of records, and I feel just like a transgendered athlete. I feel like I'm the best in the world. So anyway, here we are on our political night. It's lots of stuff to talk about, I suppose. I am snorting and twisting his nose. I just realized this. This is where they had that, where I had this skin cancer removed, and they kind of got into the lip, and it never really completely. I don't know. It just acts up sometimes. So anyway, I'll get some makeup on, and I'll feel much better afterwards. So really, only. Little bit to report on the AI front, just very, very quickly, and then we'll just jump into the questions, and we'll do ourselves a big political night. The tools are advancing so quickly now; it's almost impossible to keep track of them. They're coming in so fast. I had a rendering of, and again, I know this is our Thursday night show. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but where to put it? I was able to take a really, really simple image. Here it is. Yeah, this is a rendering of the rover from. I remember what I was going to talk about. Hang on, YouTube. Able to take a rendering of a rover, just something simple like this. This is a CGI image. I hate this bloody thing. Hang on, I'm trying again. Okay, and just using Nano Banana Pro, I could just take something like that and pop it into various editing software like this one. And I'll just show you real quick because I'm kind of grooving on this. And produce this kind of image. Oops. It's just absolutely incredible. So I just said basically take the image, the bottom image you saw, and then I said basically put it in a showroom, and this is what it did. So it's absolutely incredible. And the one thing that was really holding up the wagon train was the ability to remember shapes and geometric things. That's the rover that the Turners live in when they first get to the planet. And it was able to do that with it. This is my first pass at it, single prompt. So it's really, really getting amazing fast. And because of that, I have done something. I spent some time doing the kind of things I actually should be doing with my time, which is writing. So I've just resolved on this one to not show it until it's ready. However, but I wrote a Colonies short story called Cast 27. And it's a little mini movie, stands on its own. It's an adventure about with Jake and Will, and it's about how they find the robot. And I really love it. And of all the things that I've done, all of the renderings I've done have been tech renderings because I figured I already had the basics of writing anyway. And what what I did with this one was I sat down and just wrote it as if I was writing any other movie. So it's going to be about 25, 30 minutes. I'm going to do the first, there's 4 different beats in the story. And I'm going to do the second beat first because it's a standalone beat and it's the strongest. But this thing, when finished, Cast 27, will be Cast 27 will be a standalone short film. You won't have to have seen the any of the Colony stuff to get it. It won't require any setup. I can just play it, and it's the first thing I think I could really go out there with. I just did this rendering of the rover that I just showed you, just as we were rolling the pre-show, and with one prompt, it's just absolutely breathtaking. I know I said I'd keep it simple. I'll just do one more. I've just got it here. I'll just show it to you. So I took that image you saw of the rover, that grayscale thing, trotted it into VO3. This is the one we want here. And so it went from that real basic kind of clay animation render to I've got 4 films here. Which one do I want? That'll work. In the space of, I don't know, 10 minutes. 10 minutes from this. To this. Hang on there, YouTube. And that is just frickin' fun. So I am very, very excited, and real excited to show you guys an actual movie. No apologies, stands on its own, and is ready to go. But that's for Monday, and I should have some good stuff by Monday. The story is really, really great. It's just a really great couple of scenes. A bunch of them are, most of it is with Will and Jake, and so it's really the essence of fatherhood. That's what I'm really aiming for with the Pioneer story line on the colonies. Really, and I think it's probably the most important thing I could do politically as well. The whole idea is to give people a sense that of what what a dad is, and I think that's invaluable. Really invaluable. I was having a chat with ChatGPT about this, and it really comes down to the fact that this is a dad who's investing a lot of time and a lot of discipline into his son to make his son self-sufficient, and not only self-sufficient so that he can survive, but teaching him that classic Roman and Greek idea that real happiness is using all of your powers to the maximum ability. It's just, I'm just really proud of it, and it'll be a while before I can really show it, but I just love it, so I just thought I'd give you that update. So it's called Cast 27. It's a little short story, and as the technology now is and my skill level with the technology has gotten past the point of doing like demos, like the reentry thing, which I love so much. Now I'm actually able to tell stories, and color grade it, and up-res it, then downscale it. And we're gonna do sound design, and we're gonna, I think the thing to do is to start putting out like a couple of these little mini scenes that'll eventually be from. I think this is probably from episode 3 of the first season, something like that. So yeah, so that I'm just real excited about it. So let's see what else we got here. Going to BillWhittle.com. Ooh, that's a good looking website. Member forum. That's what we got for the day. Hope you guys have been well. Hope you've been having a good New Year. And yeah, it's pretty cool. Heteo says 3D printing will be next. I really do people still build models? Because I would really like to have like model kits for these things. I just think that'd be really cool. I know you can 3D print them, but I don't really want to do that. I'd just like to have like plastic model kits. Probably make them in China for 60 cents now or something. They're looking for things to build and sell. Anyway, so our questions for tonight are curated by Ian Nolan. Thank you so much, Ian. Appreciate it very much. And tonight we got a Ian Nolan, we got a Braden Higby, we got a Jacob Belchek, we got a Eric Blake, we got another Eric Blake, we got a Bob Neef, and that'll do it. This one might also be kind of short. We'll definitely get all the questions. Daughter brought a cold home from the club. Oh boy. All right, so here we go. Ian Nolan. Bill, I want to thank you for mostly sticking to the 11th commandment, especially with respect to the whole Turning Point USA debacle. For those of you unfamiliar with the term, the 11th commandment was a dictum of Ronald Reagan, who coined the term, and he basically said the 11th commandment is thou shalt not speak ill of other Republicans. And I think that is just a really, really, really smart idea, because God knows we catch enough flack otherwise, and I think that the disagreements that we have should be aired in private and not give the left more ammunition than they already have. Unfortunately, many conservatives are seeing one side of the current trap but not the other. Yes, there is a rise of anti-Semitism and conspiracy theory on the fringes of the right, but there's also a counter-rise of a demand that the response must be Maoist-style struggle sessions and denouncements, and a whole lot of lies about who's just said what that must be denounced. Many of the Tucker clips floating around are basically Media Matters clips, for example. Didn't know that, but it's not surprising. If the game's not clear, take a look at the ruins of the Heritage Foundation after a devout Catholic staffer asked if attending a Passover Seder was some sort of litmus test. It was. Or the fact that many, including Steve Green, unfortunately, think Megyn Kelly has gone over to the other side or something when all she said was that she's not going to denounce people at Ben Shapiro's command. He's not king of conservatives. Matt Walsh has similarly been attacked, needing to denounce Megyn Kelly for not denouncing Tucker Carlson for not denouncing Nick Fuentes is ridiculous. There's certainly a species of that. Well, Ben Shapiro isn't entirely wrong that the right should be careful with conspiracy theories. Denouncements certainly aren't the way forward. And it's also rich that Ben spent years telling people that questioning the 2020 election legitimacy or vaccine safety was the sort of conspiracy theory that he's now telling us to denounce. There's definitely that too. How many of the people now ignoring him or infighting did he push away? I think we as conservatives need to maintain healthy skepticism about conspiracy, but also recognize that some of them will end up true rather than just denounce. Let's just starve them of oxygen. No question, just thanks for reading. Well, I want to talk about that regardless. There's a lot to talk about here. Let me just grab these. Hang on so I can see what's going on up here. So I think my first take on this is that that there are really two different levels of things here. You know, Tim Pool is fighting with Candace Owens, and then Candace Owens interviewed Nick Fuentes, and Fuentes said he didn't want to get married because his life was too complicated, and does he have to set up a Tinder profile? And I'm thinking, that sounds good, but Nick Fuentes is famous, and I imagine he's making a bit of coin, and fame is the ultimate aphrodisiac, so I don't know if I really buy that. But in any event, I think there are, I think there's I completely agree that the whole thing is a spectrum, but I think there is essentially a dividing line. And on one side of that dividing line, I think you can put, I think Candace Owens belongs in a category all her own. Candace Owens is just batshit crazy. And anybody who was watching how this thing unfolded could see from the beginning. I was mentioning this from the beginning, that she's basically calling for kind of a impromptu sort of vote by acclaim to walk into the TP USA shoes. I think she's got a lot of personal issues with Charlie and Erica, and she's just lost her ever-loving mind. And I wasn't a big fan to begin with, to be honest with you. So I'm not so much violating the 11th commandment here as I'm just kind of staking out my position. I see an enormous difference between what Candace is doing and whatever you want to say Megyn Kelly is doing, for example. I think Candace is just plain evil and nuts. And I'm sorry. Let me just turn off the YouTube monetization for this. Sorry about that. Hang on. And I'm perfectly happy to stand by that. I think just watching from the sidelines, it seems to me that Nick Fuentes has, as I kind of predicted, lost a little bit of momentum because so much of his appeal is the fact that he's, his help, I'm being repressed, and a lot of the stuff that he said recently, just I don't think has helped him much among his base. And then there's Tucker, who I have heard reports of actually, like, insider reports. I don't want to state this as evidence. This is secondhand hearsay, but it's secondhand hearsay from people who firsthand would have a pretty good idea of knowing whether this is true or not. And I've heard that he's actually, gotten some money from Cutter. So I don't know, but a lot of what he's saying is stuff. So I put those three on one side of the line. I put pretty much everybody else on the other side. Let me just get this done so I can concentrate on what the hell I'm saying here. I'll turn that off. Save. Okay, you guys shouldn't have to worry about that anymore. I think that's it, and I think those three are saying things that are so contrary to conservatism that it's important to distance yourself from them because they don't. Again, I'm talking about Candace Owens, Nick Fuentes, and Tucker Carlson. They don't represent me or anything I believe, and not like subtle shades of difference. They are antithetical to the things that I believe, and it's not just the Israel issue. They're just antithetical to reason and logic and decency and all of that stuff. And then everybody else is just, kind of doing their thing. I understand that it's difficult to denounce people who are your friends, and I'm just thinking out loud on this, to be honest with you, because to me this is the core of at least the question that Ian asked. Do you have a moral obligation to denounce somebody who's a friend of yours because they say something that either you or most people find reprehensible. And I guess I am kind of walking through it this way is because I can see myself having like serious issue disagreements with friends of mine on the side of the conservative movement, but I could never see myself being friends with Nick Fuentes or Candace Owens or anything like that. I just think they're just not people I particularly care to associate with. On balance, it's done an awful lot of damage. There's no question about that, Ian. But I also think it needs to be said that even though it's a dumpster fire, it is it is the discussion is being had, and this is the difference between the left. There is no public disagreement on orthodoxy among the left, and this has been a spectacular disagreement on orthodoxy. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I've never seen anything like the left having the kind of discussions that we've had about Israel and the other issues. I've never seen the left go at abortion that way, for example, or global warming, or the trans movement. And so I think on some level, it's probably pretty healthy to have the discussion and decide as a large group of individuals, as a herd of cats, where we stand on these issues. There are things, and here I'm specifically excluding Candace because there is nothing that Candace has said that I agree with. Nothing. But there have been things that Tucker has said, and there have been things that Nick Fuentes has said that I think they're fundamentally right about, at least on a let's ask a philosophical question about this. I don't agree with their conclusions, but this discussion I think is important to have, because otherwise this stuff just completely festers. I haven't lost any friends over it, and by friends I don't mean people who are in the business. I mean I haven't had anybody that I know who's like either so deeply on Tucker's side that I'm dead to them or they're dead to me. I just think he's wrong. I think Candace is wrong. I think Nick Fuentes is wrong. I think Ben Shapiro's wrong about a lot of things. I think it's just been so emotional, I don't believe that you have again, it would depend on, let's take Jeremy Boring. Jeremy Boring is a really close friend of mine. I'm trying to think of something that Jeremy would say that would really challenge whether or not I needed to say something in response in terms of like condemning or denouncing it. And I can't think of anything that I disagree with Jeremy on that much to be able to say, no, I can't think of anything that he would say that I would have to come out and say, I just need to go on record as saying this doesn't represent my philosophy. Am I making any sense here? I know I'm kind of beating around the bush here. I'm not trying to avoid making a statement. I'm just trying to work it out as we go. So there are like big differences and little differences. And I disagree with Jeremy about some of the little differences, but I don't disagree with him about the big differences. I'll tell you who I think I admire the most in this, who's actually in the fight, but who I this is just my personal taste. The person I admire the most in this, in terms of being in the fight and yet having some sense of composure, is Dinesh D'Souza. I just really like him a lot. I've always liked him. And I'm not saying I agree with everything he says either, but he seems to be the most effective at riding that line between saying, I think this is wrong, I think we need to say that it's wrong, but not burning down everybody in the process. Just trying to catch up with the comments here. Andrew DeLay says, I think Jeremy criticized your hair. What do you say to that? Well, that's pretty big talk coming from a guy who's 5'1" or whatever he is. If he's got a real problem with my hair, he could just tell me in person, and we can just step outside and settle it like men instead of like miserable, pathetic, whiny cowards that he is. There are lines that have to be protected, and clearly that's one of them. So like Mike Knowles has handled this. Mike Knowles hasn't crossed a line for me. Matt Walsh hasn't crossed a line for me. Tim Pool has been vehement in calling out Candace, and I'm on Tim's side on that. I'm not a huge Crowder fan, but I think Crowder has stayed within the bounds of reasonable discourse, and I know Candace has crossed that line. I know Nick has crossed that line, and Tucker has said things that really I just cannot, frankly just can't understand. Saying things like, you say what you want to about Riyadh, but they don't have to worry about rape, and you can walk the streets at night. It's like, dude, that's because that is a totalitarian theocracy. That's not a feature. There's no. If you want to make that comparison, make the comparison with Poland. You can walk the streets of Poland at night too. Poland doesn't have an immigration problem. Poland is absolutely safe as houses. If you really want to say that there are problems with the U.S. being having too much immigration, or the U.S. being too lax about laws and too tolerant of social, misbehavior, then compare it to Warsaw, not Riyadh. That's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, where it sounds to me like this person has lost the plot. This doesn't represent conservative. It's not a conservative argument. It would never in a million years occur to me to make that argument. And so what I'm getting at here is pretty much this. There are disagreements, and it's good to air those disagreements. It's good to debate those disagreements. One thing I am in agreement on with Nick Fuentes 100% is that I don't think any of this stuff should be off the table. I don't think you should be condemned for raising it. I've said this many times about Nick as an example of this kind of duality that it generates in me. I think Nick is 80% right about just about everything. It's just that his conclusions are vile and also wrong. They're wrong. They're simple, and they're bombastic, and they appeal to people's emotions, and it appeals to their worst emotions. So I'm just saying, even though the thing has been a real traumatic experience, I think there are two things to leave you with on this. Ian, number one, our side can have these discussions, even if it shakes apart the movement. It's not going to shake apart the movement, but even if it shakes some people loose of the movement, at least we're having the discussions, right? What is the role of what is an appropriate role of Israel? At what point does things like AIPAC, does that really affect the sovereignty of the United States? I don't believe that it does. I don't, and I don't blame Israel for doing everything in Israel's power to advance its own interests the same way that Britain does and everybody else does. I can be convinced that they've actually gone too far with this, but I don't see it. But at least we should be willing to have the discussion. The idea that the entire subject is off limits, and just discussing the role of Israel or Jewish influence in American politics is verboten. I think that's just absurd. At the same time, it's that final 20% of people like Nick and to some degree Tucker and so on, where it just goes off the rails, and you're no longer asking reasonable questions. You're jumping to conclusions that are feeding people's worst inclinations. Yeah, like Infidel 42 says, he's talking about Maduro. It may be a commie scumbag who's starving his own people, but at least he hates gays, right? I mean, these are complex issues, and they require complex solutions. And you need to be able to have a rational, reasonable discussion without going off into the weeds about Egyptian airplanes following Erica Kirk around, and deporting anyone who's not as American as this half Mexican twerp is. This is the thing that I find most disturbing is when the thing starts to drift into the, well, I'm more American than you are argument. Do we have an immigration problem? We have a huge immigration problem. Do we have a problem where white culture is being systematically dismantled and replaced? 100% true. But these conclusions that people come to are just wrong. And I think the thing to do is to have the discussion and simply explain, why they're wrong. All of these issues are issues that used to be completely off the table. You couldn't talk about the I don't even know what the word is for this. I'll go with this simple one. You couldn't even talk about the erosion of a great deal of black culture in America. You couldn't even bring up the subject before, but there's no getting away from it now. The more of these videos you see of people just trashing stores because they got caught stealing or whatever, these conversations need to be had. These are real issues, but at the same time, if you don't have the intellectual and moral discipline to look at the problem as a problem rather than as a springboard into an emotional state, then you might as well be a liberal. Let me clarify this last bit so that at least my position is clear. I've seen a lot of videos where I'll just take a specific issue. You could apply this to the Israel issue. You could apply it to the trans issue. You can apply it to whatever you want. I've seen a lot of videos of almost exclusively black women acting so barbarically and so destructively that there are times when I simply just want to say, you know what, just ship them all back to Africa. Just honestly, we'd just be much better off. We just shipped them back to Africa. And that is a emotional reaction to seeing this kind of thing. But the difference between me and some of these other people is the second I hear a thought like that in my head, I think, well, I wouldn't ship Thomas Sowell back to Africa. Wouldn't ship Alfonso Rachel back to Africa. Wouldn't ship Denzel Washington back to Africa. Wouldn't ship. And you catch yourself, and your reason comes in and saves you from these horrific conclusions, and then you realize that you feel the same way about white people who trash stores too. And that's when you start to get to the actual rational conclusion, which is it's the behavior. It's the behavior. Now, the behavior, I don't think you can really much argue that it's disproportional, but it's still the behavior. And what I really want to ship someplace are the are the people who are not able to play ball in civilized society. I'd just like to see them all go. I don't particularly care what color they look like. And that is not something that you arrive at from just that emotional response, because we're wired as mammals and primates, and pattern recognition and tribal recognition. And you see somebody who looks different than you and your tribe, and you are wired to think this is how that tribe behaves. It's not true, but it is true that there's a lot of pathology that is disproportionately distributed towards Black America. And the reason for that largely is because the Democratic Party made a decision in the mid 1960s to start a vote plantation, and has created the most toxic, entitled, ill-disciplined, irresponsible, violent, corrosive culture in America that we've ever seen. It's real. That's really happening. And if you don't talk about it, then you're just losing credibility. This is how Nick got his. This is how Nick made his bones. This is how he made his reputation. He was willing to talk about things that other people weren't really willing to talk about. It's just that he came to conclusions that are not supportable. But you got to give him credit for that. I have noticed, I think a lot of people have noticed that on the issue of the kind of civilizational decay that you're seeing in inner cities, I think a lot of people are coming rapidly, and Gen Z is 100% into this in a big way. That the era that I grew up in my entire life, of this sort of white guilt and this sense that we can't really hold these people accountable and all the horrible things. I think those days are long over, and certainly Gen Z doesn't feel that. Gen Z is the least racist generation, raised the least racist generation. Actually, I take that back. I think probably the millennials are. By the time Gen Z started growing up, the anti-white hatred and the anti-white rhetoric was ramping up so much that they just don't buy it. So when I look back at the course of my life, I was born in 1959. I'm the tail end of the baby boom. I don't really feel like when people say, the boomers did this and the boomers did that, it's like some of the boomers did. The frickin' hippies did. The left did. Again, it's that kind of generation. The boomers goes, I wasn't out there throwing rocks at police cars in 1968. I kept referring to this thing. I kept misnaming it as Generation Robert just because I couldn't remember. Generation Jones is the term for people that are born in the tail end of the baby boom. They live right in the middle of the baby boom and Gen X. I feel a lot more now that Gen X is kind of aging into the to the part of their lives where they can be blamed for everything. There's a lot of things that I see that this was my Gen X life growing up. I said, that's not my Gen X life. That's my boomer life. So there's probably something to this Generation Jones. The late boomers, early Gen X. I was born in 59, and I think the Generation Jones things like, I think the boomers started in like 49 or 46 or whatever. That's way before my time. Anyway, I hope that's helps a little bit. Asian Hands Lincoln says, I don't know, when I see an Irishman walking down the street, yeah, Bagosh and Bagora. So again, it's easy to blame the other tribe, and Gen Z looks and says, it's all the boomers' fault. It's like, I don't know, man. I am officially a boomer, and I've been fighting the left and this entire idea my whole life. And this is the last thing I'm trying to say. I was fortunate that I came to the U.S. was born in New York. Yeah, it takes guts to admit that. But I was born in New York City when New York City was the spin. I was born in New York City you know, my dad was Don Draper. That was the New York I was born into. And I have watched, and not only watched, I have been a part of the social engineering that took place starting in the late 60s and early 70s and went throughout my entire life. And I've seen the arc of it. And that social engineering is the kind of thing that says we can't have test scores because that makes certain ethnic groups look bad, or we can't do this, or you're not allowed to talk about that, or here's a word that we can use, and not only use, but we use every other word, but you can't say it because if you do, then that's a perfectly good justification for me smashing your head in with a brick. All of this stuff. And I've watched this social engineering experiment in egalitarianism, and I've watched it fail. Whether or not, whatever the outcome of it is, I think it is clearly failed. The big experiment that if we just throw more money at the problem, and if we mix up the kids with busing, and if we do all these other things, everybody's going to come out the same. I just think that the evidence shows that it's just failed catastrophically. And we need to find some new solutions that are fair and moral and just and effective, because this I got asked where was this question? I guess it was on it was one of the right angles we shot a couple days ago, and it was about thank you very much, Roxanne, for the tiny tip jar super chat. I appreciate it very much. Yeah, it was one of the I guess it was, I don't remember if it was Scott's show or Steve's. It was talking about the fact that Hegseth is going to do a review of women in the military, specifically take a look at women in combat roles. And my position with this was, let's first of all define combat roles. There are some excellent women pilots. There's a couple of women that were flying A-10s over Afghanistan or Iraq and were just kicking ass. And I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about infantry. I'm talking about ground combat. A number of women apparently have passed Ranger School. There's something like 700 Marine Corps women who are, technically speaking, combat troops. And I am just so dead set against this. All of the so-called achievements that the Biden administration and the Obama administration were touting, the feminists were touting, the women are performing just as well as the men are. They're not. And when you talk to people who are actually in the military or during the training, they'll tell you it's not even close. This is the kind of social engineering that I'm talking about. This idea that women can be just as effective soldiers as men. They can't. And it's not just the physical stuff either. And this point I made as well. It's easy to say, they can't carry a guy out of combat. They are not psychologically built for it. And I'm standing by that. You can call me whatever you want to. They are not psychologically capable of dealing with the kind of things that men have to deal with in combat. Because frankly, men are not capable of dealing with it either. He ends up pretty much destroying the guys who've been in it. But there's a fundamental difference between the way men and women's brains work, and the ability to compartmentalize emotion is part of the male brain and the male psychology. It's not just they're raised different. It's like this is brain structure, and I think it's an awful idea. I could not believe that Hegseth was able to get trans out of the military as fast as he did. I was just completely gobsmacked by it. So here's a series of questions in our Twitch stream from Quibo. Can a woman run up a hill for miles in the morning and carry a military backpack, a 5-mile hike before breakfast? Some women can do that, but that's not the same thing. And when you say, well, women, do okay in training, it's a big difference between training and the actual thing. Aaron, the Jessica Lynch thing, she admitted she just froze up and huddled on the floor of the Humvee until she was taken prisoner. Look, we saw during the Bondi Beach shooting, we saw 3 female Australian police women hiding behind the van, and the person who ended up disarming the guy was a man. And I just have talked to so many people who are in the military, and when I ask them about this, they say, I'm not allowed to say anything on the record, and there's your problem right there. But no. And I don't know, and it's the social engineers that have told us that somehow this is a good thing, that women should be able to go into combat and get their heads blown off the same as men. Like this is repressing women by them not doing that. And this is why you end up with Scarlett Johansson, who's 5'4" or something like that, throwing these 250-pound guys around, and people think it's real. There are no women warriors, combat warriors, ground-based infantry warriors. There just aren't any. And I've seen some very brave female police officers. I've seen some very brave female firefighters. Deep says, remember the female Secret Service agents during the Trump assassination attempt? Yeah. It's a denial of reality designed to achieve a political end. And Hegseth says, look, we're just going to go in, use the same standards, and we're just going to measure it. And, okay, okay. So, Steve Young says, Master Chief Carl Brasher said, cut off my leg so I can keep being a Navy diver. Yeah. Yeah, Eric says Starship Troopers has the book has men and movie too, I guess. No, the movie has female combat infantrymen, but the book has females in the Navy, and the men are in the mobile infantry. So anyway, plus, Roxanne says, men in combat have said that having women there puts them in danger, as they can't help having and wanting to protect them. Their liability in war. I am a woman. Yes. It's an entirely different thing. And then there's the whole rape thing, and all of that. And I think it's demoralizing. And I'll even go further on this, because this is an area that I feel pretty strongly about. I'm just speaking as a guy who was a teen dork, right? Like a lot of guys, like almost all guys. I could have no problem signing up for the Navy and going on a 9-month deployment on board an aircraft carrier if it was all men. But it's not. And since it's not, that means that some of the guys on that carrier have girlfriends, and some of them don't. And to me, that would absolutely, completely destroy the morale. It's like, we're either all in this together or we're not. And I cannot imagine what it would be like to be 18, 19 years old, have your hormones just firing like that, and have women on the same steel container that you're in, but you don't have access to them. But some guys do. But most guys don't, and all the rest of it. And I think it would just completely kill morale. Now, I'd love to hear from other people about this, but that's my take on it. Damian Cavendish over there says in YouTube says, "Hey Bill, I was in the Marines at Fallujah, and I'm still not over getting my ass handed to me. No way a woman would be able to." Damian, dude, I think we talked about this before. I can't even imagine what you went through over there, and in the same way that I can't imagine what the soldiers, the Roman soldiers at Cannae went through, or the guys going ashore at Normandy or Iwo Jima or in Spotsylvania. Any of these things. It's impossible to imagine it unless you're there. But all I can tell you about this is a couple things. First of all, I'm just incredibly proud to live in the same country as people like you who volunteered to go over and fight and do things so that I don't have to. And keeping all of us safe. It's not platitudes for me. It's not. Oh, thank you for your service. No, I mean, there's hardly a day goes by when I don't realize that there are people right now sleeping in cold, wet, and smelly places so that I don't have to, and I don't have to worry about my family and my wife. And so you have my automatic respect for that. From a sanitized orbital point of view, this is, I think, what we probably spoke about before, and I think you might have thought I was being flip about this. I can't imagine what that situation is like. But from a historian's point of view, who's looking at outcomes, the way that the Marines and the Americans in general performed in Fallujah is unbelievable. It's just superhuman. I think Black Hawk Down is a really excellent war movie, a really good war movie, and I'm watching those guys, and I'm just telling you this from the heart, right? I'm not trying to not only am I not trying to ride the coattails of this, I'm specifically saying that I understand that I'm not. I'm just going to tell you the truth of something, and there's so many things that are so complex. I realize that this is probably a very naive and stupid feeling that I had, but it's a true feeling. So, with all that said, when I was watching Black Hawk Down, and the guys were pinned inside that building, and they had to send a couple of guys out, I was watching that movie, and I said, I wish I was there so that I could help. I just felt it so strongly. I wish I'd been there so that I could help. I felt the same way when I watched United 93, about Flight 93. It's a remarkable movie, but I wish I'd been on that plane. I could have landed that plane. It's a sense that I should be doing this. It's my duty, it's my responsibility to be doing this, and I didn't, I didn't because other people did. Now, I did try to get into the Air Force Academy, and I tried to sign up after 9/11, but that's just keyboard warriors kind of thing. But for certain kinds of people, and I will say, at least in the public sector, and then rather in the civilian world, I've been able to say that in the opportunities I've had to be in emergencies, I've been the guy who's running towards the sound of the not gunfire, but explosions, overturned cars, fires, that kind of thing, and just it's a real compelling thing for me. I watched the Battle of Britain, and I think, why wasn't I there? Why wasn't I there? I could have done something. So anyway, you have my undying respect and gratitude, and I know I'm speaking for a lot of people here as well. Close quarter combat in urban environment, in their backyard, where they'd had months, if not years, to set up booby traps, tunnels, all of this stuff, to go into their house like that and to kick them the way that you guys did is amazing. And I'm not trying to say it didn't come at a cost. I know it came at a horrific cost, and nobody was there has ever been the same since that happened. But you have my deepest admiration for, even if it sounds like it's coming from a complete naive idiot, I'm perfectly willing to accept that. So anyway, that's that. All right, moving on. Braden Higby, howdy from Idaho. Hey, Idaho. One dirty red dictator down, an indeterminate number to go. One thing I don't think people are talking about in regards to the Maduro raid is that Trump is probably the first president in the past 20 years, if not since Reagan, to realize that the enemies of the United States aren't facts of life that have to be negotiated around. We can actually beat them and beat them resoundingly. Amen. That said, there are a lot of different ways this can go. Do you think this is the start of a free Venezuela? Do you think we'll see Cuba and or Iran fall in the next 3 years? China in your lifetime? Here's an update on today's date. Seems like things in Iran are getting exciting. The regime has killed the internet to the whole country, and protesters have apparently torched the state media broadcaster. Do you think this 10 C-17s and 2 AC-130s gathering in Britain are related to this or some other happening? Some of the C-17s reportedly flew from bases of the U.S. that also house special forces elements like Deltas and SOARs. I would be surprised if we put I'd be quite surprised if there was the same kind of a ground operation in Iran that we saw in Venezuela. I'd be really surprised. But this was my topic on this week's Right Angle. It's a kind of new big stick diplomacy. And one of the things I've said before, and I said again on that episode, is the thing about Donald Trump is he acts as if he's the most powerful man in the world. I've been hearing that ever since I was born. President of the United States, the most powerful man in the world. It's true. But what good is it? Let me rephrase that. Are you really the most powerful man in the world if you are not willing to use that power? Or are you just sitting in the chair of the most powerful man in the world? I think this is a really important point. What's the point of having a military like this if you're not prepared to use it? I'm not saying recklessly use it. I'm just saying if you don't have the will to do what needs to be done to protect the country, then you're not really the most powerful man in the world. You're just wearing you're sitting in his office. And Trump, I got to get this episode up, but what really strikes me is that first of all, Pete Hegseth has now pulled off two of the most complex, sophisticated, difficult military operations in our country's history, both of which could have been catastrophic failures. And they went like Swiss clockwork. They were absolutely perfect. Midnight Hammer was 160 aircraft, protecting 6 aircraft, and there was no operational leaks. Same thing with the Venezuela operation. All of the left was saying the man's a drunk and he's a womanizer, and maybe he is. He's just awful damn good Secretary of War, but they were masterpieces. So we have a war secretary that knows what he's doing, and I was lobbying really hard for Hegseth way before the election, saying that I have long maintained that the Pentagon is essentially a temple designed to keep out good ideas and fresh information. So yay for him. The second thing that is astonishing is that Marco Rubio is the most elegant and effective Secretary of State I've ever seen in my life. And I think historically that we've ever had as a country. And since the Secretary of War and the Secretary of State are essentially at odds with each other, I mean, they're supposed to be at odds with each other. They're supposed to be fighting each other. Most of the history of this country, during the 60s and even with Reagan and so on, was that the State Department was pulling one way. We should be talking about this. The Defense Department was pulling the other way. No, we should be bombing the hell out of them. I've never, ever seen a State Department secretary and a War Department secretary who are so effective together at getting the national interests of the United States advanced. It's a freaking beautiful thing to watch. It actually reminded me, and once again, I mentioned this on the show, I have to get that up tomorrow. But once again, it reminded me of almost like this Kirk, Spock, and McCoy kind of thing, where you've got Spock is logic, and you've got Hegseth, who is kinetic action, where his department is to go smash things effectively. And then you've got McCoy, who's the emotion, and you've got the State Department, who's, no, we don't need to fight. We talk about this. And in Trump, you've got kind of this Captain Kirk thing, who's got these two tools, and instead of having them oppose each other, he's using both of them to get things done. Curl, it looks kind of like Curliton says, Rubio's been incredible. I've been so amazed by him. Yes, I think he's absolutely astonishing. I think he'd make an excellent vice presidential candidate. But we really have actual competence here. And it's really a joy to watch. The ultimate question is, what behaviors, what national behaviors, or what actions that the United States takes are appropriate for our view of what America is. We mentioned in the episode that apparently the representatives from both Denmark and Greenland are pushing real hard with Marco Rubio for like an emergency meeting. And I suspect they're probably concerned that Trump's just going to move in to Greenland. I can't possibly see that happening. But I like the fact that they're worried about it. So what do we want America's image to be in the world? I don't want to be a country that everybody fears, but I'd rather be feared than laughed at. I'd like to be loved and respected, but if I got to take either, well, Machiavelli said it's better to be feared than loved. I think you can probably be both. I think that's the real appeal of America, has been both. Certainly after World War II, we were feared and loved because of our behavior in the years after the war. In fact, in the hours after the war. And that's the America I want to be. I don't want people afraid of America, but I do want people to realize that that this power has been put on earth in the hands of the most moral world power that has ever walked the earth. That's certainly not to say that we're perfect by any means. As a historian who did the Cold War, whole, first half of the Vietnam, first 3/4 of the Vietnam War, terribly fought and executed and so on. But generally speaking, this is the country that had atomic weapons and fleets of bombers and could have basically taken over the entire world and no one could have stopped us. And we just destroyed our military. We just scrapped it and turned it into razor blades and soda cans. And we lifted up the people who literally hours earlier were trying to kill us and who we were fully prepared to firebomb and to nuke into radioactive dust. That's an astonishing national characteristic. And this is why the things like the erosion of civility in America and the influx of so many unassimilated immigrants is so disturbing to me. It's destroying the national character, the morality of the national character. At the very least, look, Vladimir Putin openly said, he didn't dance around this, he didn't insinuate, he said verbatim that if Trump had been president, he would not have gone into Ukraine. He couldn't have risked it. And so this is the thing that the left doesn't learn, cannot learn, will never learn. It's impossible for them to learn. It destroys they don't have the psychological structure to understand that strength means peace. They absolutely are psychologically incapable of coming to that conclusion. For them, peace means baring your throat and asking people not to hurt you and being nice to them and not giving them anything to fight over. And when they want things, you give it to them, and the more you give them, the nicer you are to them, then the nicer they'll be to you. This is the left's philosophy, the philosophy of cowardice and lack of confidence. If you want peace, prepare for war, and the more prepared for war you are, the happier you're going to be. As I pointed out in the Donald Trump, you magnificent bastard, you thunk my battleship. I was saying the thing about the battleship is, it's not just. I'm not even sure if it'll get built or not. I certainly hope it will be, but this is not a power in decline. A power in decline has the best weapons in the world, and they sit on their laurels until somebody else has better weapons. But we're replacing our Los Angeles class subs with Virginia class subs. We're replacing our F-22s with F-47s. We're replacing the Nimitz carriers, which is the most astonishing single weapon of war in the history of the world, with something better. That's a society that has a future. It's a society that is prepared to defend itself and spend the money to do it. So despite the fact that half the country, or a third of it anyway, is fully engaged in trying to destroy everything, the structure of this country is so amazing. So the country is so incredibly well built that it's able to take the kind of damage that we take and still keep fighting. It's like the USS Franklin. You know, if you ever seen the Franklin Essex class carrier in World War II in the Pacific, I'm pretty sure it was a kamikaze attack, but the Franklin you should just look it up. But they kept fighting to save that ship, and it took unbelievable damage, and it sailed back to San Francisco, and they would have rebuilt it, except by that time we pretty much won the war. So yeah, it's an astonishing country, and that's why I'm so proud of it, and why I'm trying so hard to move to a place where I am no longer dealing with the downstream consequences of politics. This whole pivot with the colonies and everything else is to go to the headwaters. It's to go to the headwaters of the culture and give people a vision of a future that looks like the best parts of our past without the worst parts of our past. That's what this technology has done starting 3-4 months ago. The colonies is my vision of what America should be, and has been and is. And that includes things like strong dads and self-reliance and self-defense and all of this stuff. So this is something that I can do that Ben Shapiro can't do, and Matt Walsh can't do, and none of them could do. And that's why I'm betting the farm on this, because I think this is my life's work, and I've been waiting 50 years to do it. So there we go. Okay, moving on. Jacob Belchek. Hail Bill. Hail Jacob. Quiet week, huh? You feel like grabbing another third world dictator for dinner over this upcoming weekend too? You know, you'd probably get 4 or 5 at the same time. David Boutte says something in the colonies needs to be named Itasca, the headwater of the Mississippi. I've been there, by the way. I've been to Bemidji, and I went to Minnesota to do 2 speaking events. They kind of pooled their money to pay my exorbitant fees, you know, to get out there. And so all I knew was I had 2 events in Minnesota. I had one in Minneapolis, and I had another one that was not in Minneapolis. And I thought, it was, you know, probably 45 minutes out of town or something. But it was in Bemidji. And that's like a freaking 6-hour drive. And I got driven there by this elderly couple who were very not Los Angeles type people. And by the time I'd ridden up with them and ridden back, I felt like they were my the grandparents I never had, and I damn near cried saying goodbye to them. They were just the nicest, kindest people I'd ever met. And but yeah, apparently up in Bemidji you can just hop across the Mississippi, which is pretty cool. So back to Jacob. I wanted to push back a little bit about some of the things that you said concerning Nick Fuentes a couple of weeks ago. I'm an ideological opponent of his, but I'm also exactly in the demographic he speaks to, and I would much rather see that demographic go away from him, although he seems to be doing a good job of that himself when he says that getting married and having kids is gay. Yeah, I completely agree. I think that was a really big turning point. You prodded Fuentes for being 27 and disconnected from women. If you want to effectively reach people in my demographic, this will be counterproductive. There's no male over the age of 17 that is not still, in your words, an incel who is highly motivated not to be that anymore. Let me try that again. There is no male over the age of 17 that is not, still in your words, an incel who's highly motivated not to be that anymore. Okay, so that thing I grew up with apparently is not true. Fuentes speaks to an emotional perception in my demographic, white males, 20s to 30ish, that the moral judgment of the entire world has been aimed at us for years and relentlessly pummeling us for being the cause of every problem. They were raised in a culture that trained them to behave a certain way, and after they did, sold them out financially, culturally, and romantically. Their consistent and repeated experience has been watching everyone around them be elevated to positions that they do not deserve, destroy whatever they touch, and then have to absorb the blame for that failure. Overwhelmingly, and whether it's true or not, they will point to their diminished lives and say, I did everything that my society told me to do, told me I was supposed to do if I wanted to live the good life, and why did that not occur? First of all, it's very, very well put. Secondly, as I said earlier, Nick Fuentes is not right about 80% of the things. He's 80% right about just about everything. And this is certainly his appeal. I would say I am more aware than, I'll go out and say this. I would say I am more aware than any other conservative commentator of just how appalling Gen Z women are. Just how absolutely predatory, entitled, stupid, loathsome, they're just a bunch of I'm generalizing obviously, but compared to previous generations, they're just the dumbest bunch of whores I've ever seen in my life. Man, I really get that. I really do. They are just really, really, really loathsome. Back to our friend here. Overwhelmingly, and whether it's true or not, they will blame the structures that trained them because they feel they've been lied to. These structures were built and maintained by your generation, Mr. Whittle. You will not only meet fury and disgust from young men for chiding them for failing to perform well in a society that they believe you set on fire while they were still in the cradle. I didn't set anything on fire, dude. The left set this on fire. I didn't tell young people that they... I didn't protect them from failure. The left did. People my age did, but I wasn't the one saying, no, we should give them the self-esteem first. I wasn't the one saying, no, we shouldn't keep score at baseball games. I was the one who was fighting this tooth and nail then, and I'm fighting it tooth and nail now. And to say that the boomers did this is just not true. It's the left that did it. And yes, the left had a lot of boomers. A lot of boomers are leftists, but so are a lot of Gen Xers and so are a lot of millennials, and so there's a lot of that. Eric says that's the point he's making. Let me finish reading it for so on. Nick Fuentes will only gain for being critiqued for his singleness by a boomer when the average American woman over 20 years old is 5'3", 171 pounds, whose chief political concern is likely to be their right to murder children before birth, and who is likely hooking up with guys since her middle to late teens. I want you to succeed with my demographic, and I want Fuentes to fail with them. They can take the world being stacked against them, and many of them probably relish the idea of overcoming it, but they cannot take older men who they are generally genetically hardwired to seek guidance and mentorship from, cutting their legs out from under them from a place of perceived comfort. Okay, part of that's fair, and part of it's not. First of all, this comfort is I don't know where you get that. They're I really just a little gobsmacked by that. I really look, man. I deeply appreciate the advice, and I understand where it's coming from, and I'm not taking this out on you, Jacob, at all. I'm just reacting to the sentiment that is out there. I deeply resent the fact that people think that my generation set this thing up. Left-wingers on my generation set this thing up. I was a kid watching TV. I was watching All in the Family. I was watching Maude talking about how great abortion was. We were the ones who had to make the changes from what our parents believed to what people have come to believe today. And most of us have been fighting this for as long as we've been aware. I was 12 years old or 13 years old when I saw a bumper sticker that said, next time you talk about the cops being pigs and your house is being broken into, call a hippie. I hate the goddamn hippies, and I always hated them, and I've always fought against them. I'm not the person who did the social engineering. I'm the person who's been saying these young people need fathers. I didn't create the birth control pill. I didn't do the social engineering. I'm not a feminist. I'm not a leftist. I didn't do any of that stuff. And most of the people I know who are boomers didn't buy that stuff either. The entire purpose of what I'm trying to do, and it'll help a lot when I get this CAST 27 thing finished, because that'll be the first just standalone things. Well, I don't even know really where to start with this. Hang on a second. Now, I'm certainly willing to admit that I was hard on Gen Z for quite a while until I realized exactly what had been, until I heard their point of view. Because to people like us, it sounds really whiny. It sounds like, oh, I've got all these hardships and stuff, and you had it made. And that's built into your question, by the way. You guys had it made, and we're the ones who got stuck with the scraps. We didn't have shit made. We didn't have anything made. This idea that I see all the time out there is, oh, boomers and Gen X had everything handed to them. It's just wrong. It's just not true. The fact that you believe it is a factor that has to be dealt with, but it's just not true. I don't know. For example, you see this a lot. Your generation could afford to get a house with with a one person working and this housing prices, and here's the wage thing, and so on. Well, the houses were not the same. A lot of them didn't have air conditioning. Let me just cut all that bullshit out of the way and just get to the point of this. Hang on a second. I just got to grab this thought. Just flew away. Oh, come on. Just talk amongst yourself, because this is actually the entire point. Gen Z will say that that they can't make a living, that they don't get paid enough to make a living wage, and we did. That the boomers, when they were in their teens and 20s, were able to make a living wage and afford an apartment and make some kind of progress. And I heard somebody put this down, and I thought this was really true. Yes, we did. But you know what we didn't have? We didn't have $8 cups of coffee, and we didn't have PlayStations, and we didn't have $1,400 telephones. We didn't use DoorDash or Uber Eats. Our standard of living was so much lower than your standard of living that you would not recognize it. It is incomparable, our standard of living compared to your standard of living. So this idea that we were living your life with all of the PlayStations and all of the rest of this stuff, and that we just had it and it somehow was affordable then but it wasn't now, is just plain wrong. Our lives were infinitely more simple, infinitely less expensive than your lives. And when you hear people talking about, oh, boomers had it so great. Oh, I got to update my phone now because it's, I need to get the iPhone 17 Pro, and I need to have, an $18 hamburger delivered to my house, and all of this stuff. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The things that were, actually dialed a phone and constant contact, constant entertainment. I just reached down and get the answers to all the questions. I'm never bored. I got all of this stuff with these devices. We didn't have any of this stuff, dude. We had bicycles and we made paper airplanes, and that's what we did. So this idea that we were living the kind of life that you were living, except that it was affordable then, but it's not affordable now, is just plain wrong, and it's not fair. And all of this to say that without question, Gen Z has taken the hardest hit of the 50 years of social engineering that went on in this country that started with my generation. We're the ones who had to watch Archie Bunker get taken apart by Rob Reiner and be told that he's an idiot because he loves his country, and be told that he's an idiot. We're the ones that had to watch this stuff. We're the ones that had to deal with all of this. We're the ones that had to deal with the school busing. We're the ones that had to deal with all of this. It was done to us by the left, by people that wanted this country destroyed. So this idea that we just sat there on some kind of golden hill and just, enjoyed everything and now just criticizing people because you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I see young people saying, I can't believe I have to go out and work. I'm quitting my job because it's 30 hours a week. I started working when I was 13, and I've been working every day of my life since I was 13. So I understand where you're coming from, dude, and I understand you're on my side, and I don't want you to think I'm taking this out on you because I deeply appreciate it. I wanna succeed with them too. The way I think that but this structures this is the line. Overwhelmingly, whether it's true or not, they will blame the structures that trained them because they feel that they have been lied to. These structures were built and maintained by your generation, Mr. Whittle. That's in bold. No, those structures were built and maintained by leftists who were my age. They were enhanced by Gen Xers who were Gen Xers ages, and then then this thing spread like a cancer throughout society with millennials, and now Gen Z is getting hit with the result of this. But this idea that we created this, we fought this thing tooth and frickin' nail. Tooth and nail the whole time. And we see people who are so, whose lives are so much better than ours were at that age, complaining about the fact that they have to get up and go to work. And we look at this and we go, how come we should all have a universal basic income? I didn't get a universal basic income. Colonel Angus says we didn't do enough to stop commies, Bill. Yeah, I suppose that's true. But the people that started this engineering that has led to this feminist societal catastrophe was not designed by my generation. We were the first ones into the abattoir. We were the first ones into the abattoir, and we were the first ones who had to sit there and start eating this stuff. I had a class, my last class at the University of Florida in 1981 was a feminism class where I sat there and I got to listen to people tell me that males are not capable of forming real friendships and all this other stuff. And we were the ones who had to, we certainly had the advantage of not having heard that before. We weren't raised with it. But we were the ones who had to be who had to face this. And look, man, I was in this class, and some chick said that, and men can't form real friendships, and there were 2 males in that class and 37 females, and the only reason I took it was because it was the only thing left, because I got back from, I wasn't sure I was able to make it with financial aid, so all the classes were gone. But I said that's ridiculous. That's just nuts. You're a Nazi and a fascist and all the rest of that stuff. So, okay, who was doing the teaching then? Who was making All in the Family and Maude? That was Norman Lear, who's 20 years, 30 years, 40 years older than me. Okay. This stuff started with the Frankfurt School, and it started when they started their long march to American institutions, which really began in the late 1950s, which is when I was born. So they're the people that put this poison into the system. And I'm not denying that Gen Z has taken a more concentrated dose, and I'm not denying that we had a better fighting chance of it because we hadn't had 3 generations of that poison. But this idea that we created this is just nonsense. Now, the obvious point is, it doesn't matter whether it's true or not, that's the perception. So, okay, boomer. All right, got it. I want to go back to this Fuentes thing. There is no male over the age of 17 that is not still, in your own words, an incel who is highly motivated not to be that anymore. The part that's like, this is the heart of the Gen Z experience. Their consistent and repeated experience has been watching everyone around them be elevated to positions that they do not deserve, destroy whatever they touch, and then have to absorb the blame for that failure. Yes, Gen Z, and this is absolutely true. Boomers, this is something boomers never had to go through. We never had to go through DEI. We never had to go through this white people are evil. We just saw the thing starting. But no, we never had to do that. We were never taught to hate ourselves. I'm a space age kid. If you really want to put a label on me, there's a much narrower window, and I suspect this is what the Generation Jones thing is all about. There's a much narrower window that really formed me. I'm not a baby boomer. I'm not a Gen Xer. I am a space age kid. Okay, that 6-7 year window, not a 20-year window or a 25, 30-year window. I'm a 6-7 year window, and that was absolutely the most amazing time to be born in this country. And I've never stopped being grateful for that. But that bears consequences too, pal, because my space age generation is the generation that was told that we're going to have, those kind of cars, and we're going to have all of this stuff. We're going to have moon bases and colonies. We're not going to have social strife. We're not going to have DEI. We're going to be, it's Saturn by 1970. We're going to have moon bases and Mars bases. My generation was the one that basically was told, hey man, the future is going to be awesome, and we're just getting started. So when I walked the moon landing, I thought this is the beginning of everything. And what did we get out of it? We got frickin' tie-dye jeans and 40 years of no energy for you, kill nuclear power. What was left of the space program was we're just going to go around in circles for 30 years with a bloody space shuttle. We were sold a future that worked. And we got to watch our entire lives go without any progress on this. I'm about to be 67, so I'm not going to get to see it. You people are still young. You still have a chance to have the future that we were promised and didn't get. And we didn't get it because of the bloody left, because of the left, the left, the left. And the greatest achievement that we saw growing up is now routinely mocked by people who are 20, 25 years old, as it couldn't have happened because there's no way the boomers couldn't have done it without their computers, without their precious computers. And this is horrific. It's torture to watch this. And all of this, and this is the thing we need to close on this particular subject. Gummins beat me to it. The left ruins everything. This isn't an age-based phenomenon. It is a politically based phenomenon, and in some way, Gen Z is the first generation since my generation that doesn't buy into this stuff that we were sold and that Gen X was sold and that the millennials were sold. Gen Z at least has the freedom to say, oh, we don't believe this BS anymore. We had to. Well, again, I'm saying we had to. I never once went along with this. Like I said, in that feminism class, I'm surrounded by all these angry, nasty women. No, you're wrong. You mean men can't have real friendships? Are you kidding? It's women who can't have real friendships. You ever met a woman? Nope. Eric says, Bill, millennials like myself had to suffer the exact same stigma as boomers for the same reason. The lefties of our generation stole and corrupted our reputation. Yes. And for the Gen Zers who are feeling like, oh, you're blaming us for everything, we got blamed by our parents too. Our parents were greatest generation, and they had astonishing accomplishments, and they came back from the war, and they didn't want any loud noises, and they wanted Perry Como and Lawrence Welk, and they wanted to sit down and not hear explosions, and we were constantly being told that we weren't as good as they were. And unfortunately, we had evidence that they were right. So, what I'm trying to do is get out of this political commentary space. And what I'm trying to do, and you'll be the judge of this, and Jacob, I don't want you to read this emotional reaction as being directed against you. It's not. I understand you're trying to help me, and I understand exactly what you're doing, and I really deeply appreciate it, and believe me, it has an effect on me, a big effect on me. But what I'm trying to do is to create, there is no vision for the future that doesn't suck. And Gen Z, as a general rule, has no idea what a strong father looks like, because everything you've ever seen about white males has been that they're either idiots or they're evil. You've seen women beat them up, and I suspect a lot of people really believe that's true. This is why I occasionally get a real visceral, I'm not proud of this, mind you, I'm just telling you it's real, a real visceral satisfaction out of watching videos where you occasionally see women who just walk up and start punching men in the face, and then finally one of these guys is just had enough, and it just knocks her across the room. It's like, okay, okay. So, Nick Fuentes will only gain for being critiqued for his singleness by a boomer when the average American woman over 20 years old is 5'3", 171 pounds, whose chief political concern is like, yeah, well, if Nick Fuentes is thinking he's leading a movement by telling people that having sex with women is gay, then he's not going to succeed. And I've seen pictures recently of Nick on a couple of outings with his cat person. This guy kind of dressed with little cat ears and stuff, and he looks happy as can be. I didn't think he was gay before. I'm really rapidly changing my opinion on this. Let me see again. Gotham Coach said, hey, Bill, my little teenage nephews are here watching you live right now. For some reason, they keep asking me to ask you to say how old you'll be again this year. They want to hear the 2 digits. In April, I will be 67 years old. So there you go. And I think if I darkened my eyebrows and my hair, I probably could pass for a little younger than that. Oh, I see. Sorry. Yes. Yes, I'm 67. Back when I was a child, I can't remember if I was 6 or 7, but it might have been 1967. It certainly wasn't 78. It must have been 67. It was 1967. I was, how old was I? 16 or 17. And I would get up in the mornings, usually around, I don't know, 6 or 7 a.m., somewhere around there. 6, 7, something like that. And I go to work, work 12 hours, come home around 6, 7, something, so in that neighborhood. And I don't know. I just, West of Eden has shown up with a $100 super chat again. John, you magnificent bastard. Thank you. Again, as usual, again, thank you. It's mind-boggling. Yeah, and his name is John Eden. Yeah. Yeah, we used to have we used to have these mile markers on the way to school. And I just remember the route because once we got on US 1, there were 4 of them. And then all of a sudden there were 3. It used to be 6, 7, 8, 9, but now it's just 6, 7, 8 because 7, 8, 9. So, yeah. Anyway, let's see how many we got left here. 1, 2, 3. We probably got about 6 or 7 questions left to go tonight. And then I'll go home. What time is it here? It's 6. No, it's 7. It's actually 7:57, which is almost 8. It's practically 9. But 7, 8, 9. I don't know, man. It's just hard for me to keep track of. Anyway, I didn't understand what the question was, but I guess they were commenting about my age. Yeah. I can hum the theme from Skibidi Toilet for you if you'd like. Yeah. Anyway, no, I heard a friend of mine who was a 767 pilot, and he was talking about what was it? I think he'd had to land like in 0 conditions like 6 or 7 times that particular month, and it was just crazy. All right, let's see what we got here. Anyway, Jacob, that reaction was directed at the criticism and not at you. And I understand that you're on my side, and I'm going to let the next thing I do speak for itself. So, the next thing is about dads and kids and what it should look like and what wives should look like. And you can tell me. Got him, coaches. You're the best, Bill. Hilarious AF. And Woody, love you, old Uncle Bill. Hello to you, teens out there, and your whimsical ways. Here's a $50 super chat from Michael Harvey. Strauss-Howe generational theory explains this. Yeah. I don't know what Strauss-Howe generational theory is. I'm going to do it, though. I'm going to pull up a tab, first of all, because I really appreciate the super chat. That's very, very generous of you. And there's not a lot of things I run into that I've never heard of before, and that seems to be one of them. Hang on a second. I'll just put that there so I can look at it later. Strausser generational theory, developed by William Strauss and Neil Ho, posits that American history unfolds in roughly 80 to 90-year cycles called secula. Yes, this is my fourth turning thing. Yes, and I was on that train really hard, and I will be again. I've completely understand that theory and have spoken about it live at length, and I think it's absolutely true. Yes, I'd never heard it called that before. Okay. All right. So anyway, thanks again for that, Jacob. I appreciate it, and believe me, I will incorporate that lesson, bitter though it may be to swallow, because that's certainly the perception, and that's it. As far as the Fuentes thing goes, it seems to me that it would be more effective to find somebody who could give you, advice on how not to be. It's just hard for me to understand it's hard for me to understand being in an 18-year-old body and not wanting to get out of, let's just say, the friend zone. Okay, that's a nicer way of putting it than incel. Incel's a loaded term, but people like me were just sort of naturally, not I wouldn't say drawn to the friend zone so much as designed for it. This it's a very leftist idea that you can just sort of nice your way into line. Doesn't work that way. No, got to be strength, man. Strength and control. And I could give, I almost said I could give good dating advice to young men, but I wonder how much that would be predicated upon the availability of decent material to try it on. They're certainly out there, but Lord, these these bitches are out of control, man, and they're getting smacked hard with reality. A lot of them now are reaching the age when they're like, they've had their 20s and they've had trains run on them, and they're and they've got a body count of 150, and then they're finally ready to settle down, and it's like guys are like, what do you mean you don't want to date me because I've slept with 200 guys on my 5-day weekend in Miami? See you later. So, hey, stay safe. Cool. All right, moving on. Eric Blake, tonight, the case of the Trumpian townships. I have to tell you, Eric, I am a sucker for alliterative titles. I just love it. Aaron says, I'm 45 years old. There are no women out there, just none. I'll tell you what, pal. Just before I got married, I spent a number of years on Match.com, and just before I got married, like a year before or so, I just played around with the dating apps and stuff, and Tinder and things, and dude, those are really bad for men. They're really, 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 really bad. I think they're brutal. I think I should do a show entirely on this subject. Gotham Coach says, imagine being a teenager in a relationship in today's day and age with social media platforms and smartphones with GPS and going live FaceTime capabilities. How do you like and cheat as a teen with this tech? I heard somebody, yes, you did, Asian Hands. I heard somebody else say this very recently, and I've been saying it for a while, that the ultimate outcome of the damage that social media has done, and combined with the fact that we now no longer can believe our eyes because of tools like AI videos, I think the only possible I'm not saying it's right around the corner, but I think the only possible conclusion is that people will abandon their devices because there is no longer anything in it that provides any kind of nourishment at all. Not even entertainment nourishment anymore. Um, I think we're heading for a world where we're going to be going back to person contact because everything else is just poison. It's just deadly poison. Is that Wesley Haytack there? I'm a year and a half older than you. You kids with your nutty ideas. All right, here we go. So I just realized now I'm going to spend a whole year being a generational joke until I turn 68. Catherine Gagney says, Gen X mom here, kids 30D, 28S, and 10S. I want to give young men hope. As the fourth turning happens and life gets more brutal, women out of reality will be humbled and realize the worth of a good man. Yes. And this is why the colonies work so well, because it is a brutal frontier and you don't have the luxury of spitting in the face of reality. Those roles just happen naturally. Jake is a big, strong man, and Lisa is a tiny little woman, and they make a great team. They make a great team. What was that line? Hang on. This goes to. I'll get to you in a second, Eric. This is going back to the Jacob thing, which is obviously really important. So I think I read this before, but this is my model relationship, and it's not this perfect, like, oh, I found the perfect woman. No, it doesn't work like that. But this is the way I view male and female relationships in an idealized situation. Jake externalizes stress into action. That's actually rather good. He externalizes stress into action. So he's constantly on the lookout to protect his family. He's wired to do that. I was able to send some money to my mother-in-law, who I've never met, and my stepdaughter, who I have met and who I miss very much. They can't get out of Russia. And that's the best feeling I've ever had. I mean, I came to this game really late. But taking care of your family is wired into men. So Jake externalizes stress into action. Lisa internalizes stress into vigilance. So in a situation where society's more stressful than it is today, at least on the surface, it's pretty comfortable out there, When you're on the frontier, when the ambient level of risk and danger is higher, the men will externalize that worry into action, protective action, and the women will internalize that worry into vigilance. Where's the next threat coming from? And then I will deploy the man, and he'll go and try and neuter that. So that means that Lisa notices subtle shifts first. Lisa compensates socially and emotionally. Jake assumes equilibrium because nothing's on fire. In this relationship, Jake doesn't see internal stresses. He just sees things that are on fire. Lisa, being female, is internalizing threats and is watching the entire spectrum. And just because it's not on fire doesn't mean it's a problem. And this is what my experience with my wife has been. This creates a pre-existing dynamic where Lisa feels, if I don't track this, no one will. She doesn't resent it yet, but the ledger exists. The ledger, yeah. Jake believes in lines. Lisa believes in gradients. I think that's really, really good. Jake's strength is clarity. Lisa's strength is discernment. See what a great combination that is. I have this relationship with my wife. Whatever the issue is, the Ukraine war or simple little things or anything, I see moral clarity, and I don't have any problem making a moral decision about things. She sees nothing but moral gradients, and she is constantly nuancing my position, and I am constantly sharpening hers. So, that's pretty good. Characters, and ultimately, when I was working on this about, why do these people, why do people stay married? Not why they get married, everybody knows why they get married, but why do people stay married? What is it? You think, you have this ideal, nobody has ideal relationships. And I think that the thing boils down to the people that stay married because they just refuse to leave. It's just, they refuse to leave. And that got me to a sentence that says, character is revealed not by what you pursue, but by what you refuse to abandon, no matter how bad it gets, no matter how stressful it gets, no matter how alluring the idea of going out and starting fresh and finding the perfect person and all the rest of this stuff, no matter how tempting that is, and it seduces half of married people. It's not a question of what you pursue. It's a question of what you refuse to abandon. You will not give this up. And I really think that's it, man. I think it's that simple. Okay, back to the alliterative Eric Blake. Happy New Year, Bill. Happy to you, Eric. So as we look forward to Trump's East Wing Ballroom and Triumphal Arch in D.C., I do not like the Triumphal Arch at all. I really don't. That's the only thing he's done that I'm just like really gives me the willies. What are your thoughts on his proposed freedom cities on unused federal non-parkland? Considering how much zoning laws are to blame for the affordability crisis, why should we trust this sort of planned city project? I think it's a catastrophe. I think cities are done. I think the meta cycles of history say that they're finished. There's just no need for them anymore. That's why they're dying. I don't want cities. I want. I've never lived a rural life. I spent a lot of time in cities, but never lived in a city, and I don't want to. I have a pretty good idea of what living in New York must be like. I've spent, weeks there, but I don't want to do that. I don't particularly want a rural life either. This kind of suburban sort of environment is just, I'm just tuned for that. And I think that's what I would like to, me personally, is I think the idea of building new cities is just nuts. They're done. It's like building new, horse carriages or something like that. And yes, anytime you build a city, you're going to have city problems. And when you have city problems, you're going to have people pandering to large numbers of people who don't have a sense of self-sufficiency, and so they are going to be seduced by the handouts, and your freedom city turns into, Detroit or Chicago or whatever the case may be. There you go. Well, we got another Eric Blake, so don't you worry about that. Tonight, the case of the Persian penumbra. Hey, Bill, what are your thoughts on the current situation in Iran? Dare we hope for a new 180-degree revolution over there? Observe, and here's Trump says U.S. intervened in Iran, starts killing protesters, locked and loaded. I think I probably handled that one earlier, Eric. It's not Venezuela. I think the best thing we can do with Iran is, look, I don't remember what year it was. I want to say it was either 2009 or 2015. It was one of those two, I think. But it was the Green Revolution in Iran, and the mullahs were teetering on the edge. And if the United States had simply said, we support you morally, that would have done it. But Barack Obama was the president, and so the mullahs put people down again. The question is, you can look at. I think the best way to predict what happens with Iran is to look at what happened in the Soviet Union. The first generation of Soviets really believed in the workers' paradise, and they watched millions of people starve to death and millions more being murdered. But they believed in the idea so much, and they fought for it so much, that they genuinely believed in it. And by the time the Soviet Union fell, it had been a full generation of people who nobody bought this stuff. Natasha grew up in the final days of the Soviet Union, and they had these. You had to work every third or fourth Saturday. You had to volunteer your time to go help out with this or go help out with that. And there were people from who would they be? Natasha was one of the pioneers. Everybody was. They were like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. It's not Komsomol. It's I know people have already answered it. I give up. It's kind of like the communist farm team. Come on. Anyway, by the time Natasha was in school, they would send these pro-state evangelists to talk about how great the Soviet Union is and all that stuff. I can't remember. Hang on a second. Komsomol. Oh, I was right. It was the Komsomol. What am I thinking of? Comintern is what I was thinking of. Komsomol. Yes, I got it right. Okay. Anyway, so the people from Komsomol would come into her classroom, and they would talk about Lenin, and they'd talk about the great Soviet Union, and none of them believed it. No, none of them did. It was just a joke to them, and they had to have the parades, they had to hold up the pictures of the leaders, and nobody believed in it. And that certainly seems to be the situation in Iran right now. Are they making new mullahs? Are there young people that had that revolutionary zeal? I think the answer is no, and they're much in the same situation we talked earlier about with Gen Z, where all that modern young Iranians have is just the pain of it and none of the belief in it. They have no connection to the Tsar, to the Shah or whatever cruelties he inflicted on people. They've just grown up in this world where they're not allowed to dance, they're not allowed to hold hands, they're not allowed to kiss in public, not allowed to do any of this stuff. And I think they see the rest of the world and they're just like ripe for it. So I don't see how Iran, it gets more and more brittle. And I think that the Midnight Hammer thing really affected the mullahs, shook their confidence, and I think it probably affected the people an awful lot too, that the Americans could just fly over our country and our entire Iranian military, which has been touted as the answer to to the godless atheists of the West, just went over there and just flew over their cities with impunity. That's the one thing that totalitarian regimes cannot take, is ridicule and disdain. They can handle people fearing the regime, but if people look at the regime and just say they're just a bunch of incompetent losers, then I think that's where Iran is. So I wouldn't be surprised if if the mullahs were gone by the end of this year, just because they seem so fragile and brittle to me, and I would be very, 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 very happy to see that regime go. It's a cause of a lot of problems in the world, probably most of them, and can we get on with it and have our space elevators and things like this without having to worry about people flying airplanes into them and things like that? Look, it's not Iran. It's Islam. Islam is crystallized primitivism. Everywhere that crescent flag flies is a disaster. And And there's no question about it. So, I wish it wasn't true, but it is. So there you go. Okay, last one. Bob Neef, what's your opinion of the Osprey military aircraft? Well, it's become pretty effective, and they're was earlier talking about how a failing power doesn't improve on what are already the best weapons in the world, but there is a new version of the Osprey. It's not like a updated Osprey. It's an entirely new aircraft. It's supposed to be considerably faster. Let me just look real quick. The V-280 Valor instead. Oh, geez, this thing is kind of badass looking. Holy crow. And this thing looks wicked. They're going to use this to replace the Black Hawk. All right. Okay, so let me. Here's a chance to talk a little bit about something we almost never talk about here on the Stratosphere shows, and that's airplanes. I'll just make this short. There is a physical limit to how fast a helicopter can fly. It's not an engineering problem, it's a physics problem. And this is how it works. If you imagine a helicopter that's hovering, you've got essentially wings, you've got the rotors that are going around, right? They're spinning around rather quickly, and they're providing lift. It's holding the helicopter in the air. Okay, great. Lift is generated by the airflow over the lifting surface, which in this case is the rotors. So far, so good. When you start to push that helicopter through the air forward, what happens is the blade that is moving forward in the arc is now getting extra lift because of the airspeed of the helicopter through the air. So that forward moving blade is getting more lift because it's got 50, 100 knots coming its way. And likewise, as it gets around to the point where it's retreating, now it's getting almost no lift at all, because in still air, all of the blades are moving through essentially zero air, so they're all generating equal lift. But that trailing edge rotor is now generating almost no lift at all because it's 100 mile an hour through the air. 100 mile an hour through the arc is being canceled by the 100 mile an hour wind going in the other direction, relative wind. So to make a long story short, there is a physical limitation of how fast a helicopter can fly forward because of the leading edge and trailing edge asymmetry. The side that's moving forward, which is usually the right side if I recall correctly, will be generating more and more lift on that disc, and the left side, the retreating blades, will be generating less and less lift, and eventually the asymmetry of the disc becomes greater than the control ability to even it out, and so Trinity Waters says that nonlinear lift is not the problem, it's the maximum airspeed over the rotor. Well, that's what I'm talking about. In still air, all of the rotor blades are moving at the same speed through the air. But if the helicopter is moving at 100, 200 knots forward, then the advancing blade is getting a lot more airflow over it, and the retreating blade is getting a lot less. So there is a practical limit, and that limit is probably in the neighborhood of 180 knots, something like that, somewhere in that general vicinity, I think. Let me see. So the Osprey solves the problem by not having helicopter blades. It's basically got rotors that tilt, and so they don't have the asymmetrical blade difference. Now let me see here. Just some numbers here. That's really remarkable. Fastest helicopter speed record belongs to a modified Westland Lynx, I think it's a British helicopter, that hit 250 miles an hour 250 miles an hour is the fastest that a helicopter has ever flown. Much closer to reality would be, oh, come on. Let's see. Okay, so 250 miles an hour is the limit. The Black Hawk, which is a damn good helicopter. Black Hawk's top speed is 222 miles an hour. So 222 miles an hour, that's full tilt boogie. And I suspect that's nothing close to a full load. The Osprey hits about 320 miles an hour, so that's 100 miles an hour faster than the Black Hawk. And then the Valor will do 320 miles an hour. So that's at least 100 miles an hour faster than the fastest helicopter, which may not sound like much, but when you're trying to get in and out of people shooting at you, having that extra 100 miles an hour is awful nice to have. So basically, I didn't know that it was actually going to replace the Black Hawk, but it has all of the advantages of a helicopter in terms of its being able to land and take off vertically. It looks like it's got a much wider footprint than the Black Hawk does. But the primary reason for them is because they can fly through the air, ingress and outgress at least 100, probably 150 knots faster. That's almost half again, or almost twice the speed. They had enormous problems with the Osprey, really big problems with the Osprey when it was starting, because you have to be able to survive an engine failure. So you've got a turboprop engine, which is a very reliable engine, but if you got two engines and you lose one of them, you flip right over, and that's bad. So the engineering problem was, how do you have one engine drive both rotors in the case of one of them failing? And that took a lot of work. There was a joke that they had with test pilots where for the Osprey, where the engineers apparently cut a hole like about that big into the instrument panel on one of the test flights and said, pilot said, "What the hell is this for?" And the engineer said, "Well, this is, we put that in case you have an engine failure." He says, "What does it do?" And the engineer said, "Oh, it's just a .45 caliber bullet. Just put you right out of your misery. You don't have to, have to live through 40 seconds of mortal terror as you go down." But we solved the problems, and they are they're pretty effective. This new one looks really, it's a V280 Valor. It looks much smaller than the Osprey. It looks much thinner. But in any event, we got it going. So they're very impressive flying machines, and as a matter of fact, they feature pretty heavily in the colonies. As a matter of fact, you could use jet exhaust on a airless world. You could use rocket exhaust, but hovering is a very inefficient way to stay in the air. F-35 can, the Marine version, I guess it's a C version, I think, will take a lot of, go straight up and straight down, but it just sucks fuel. The efficient way to stay in the air is through aerodynamics, is to have airflow over a wing. Most people don't realize this, but well, certainly if you've ever flown a small airplane like a Cessna 150 or something, or Cessna 172, that engine is not strong enough to keep you in the air. It's not even close. It's not, I bet it's not 10% of what you need to vertically hover. But what the engine on an airplane does is it doesn't counter gravity. It moves you through the air, and then the aerodynamics of the wing do the heavy lifting. In fact, the first airplane that had a greater than a 1-to-1 thrust ratio, I think, was the F-15 Eagle. In other words, up until the Eagle, which was 1972, there was not a single airplane that was powerful enough to accelerate going straight up. In other words, the wings were doing all the work, but the F-15 was the first airplane could accelerate straight up where the wings are essentially doing nothing. And so, man, aerodynamics is fantastic. And in the colonies, a lot of this travel is by tilt rotor because it's a lot less expensive than using jet thrust or rocket thrust. You just have to let the you know. And by the way, the Valor seems to have a lot more wingspan than the Osprey, so it's getting a lot more lift in cruise, which means, a lot of good things. Real quick with Got 'em Coach here. But why is Trump ignoring his personal doctor, suggesting that he stop taking so much aspirins to thin his blood? Trump says he's so used to taking aspirin for so long, why would he stop at 80 years old? I don't know, but he better listen to his doctors, because he's 80, man, and I think if he takes care of himself and gets off those thinners, I think he's got at least another good 6-7 years left in him. So anyway, there you go. All right, so that'll do it. I am got a couple of other things to deliver and got right angles to do, but I am really looking forward to being able to put out something. The delivery requirements for this CAS 27 thing is that it plays without explanation. No setup, no, well, we got this, or we don't have this in yet, or we're going to work it. No, it's just going to be like it just plays. And if it doesn't look like a movie, in other words, if you look at things, oh, that's good for AI, then it's a failure. It should just look like, wow, that's really cool, man, that's really, really cool. So we'll see. Oh, you're welcome, Bob. I'm glad to see you live there. Fantastic. Yeah, so it was a real troubled child, but a lot of them are. The F-16 was the first fly-by-wire airplane where the controls were not directly linked to the stick. The stick sent instructions to a flight computer. Flight computer moved the control surfaces. The F-16 is unflyable without the flight management system. And since then, fly-by-wire is the way to go for everything. But the F-16 was the one that had to solve the problems, and that's why they called it the lawn dart, because you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it. There you go. So anyway, yeah, that'll do it. I'm real excited, and looking forward to this in a big way. So we'll see. We should have at least something interesting, tiny little bits to tease people with come Monday, because I'm going to be working on this a lot during the weekend. In any event, this show is made possible by the members of BillWhittle.com, who are steely-eyed missile men and women, all of them, and we're very grateful for their support. I know it's been real stressful, and looks like we're not really doing much of anything here, but it's a big pivot, and ultimately I decided, a couple months I'm going to be 67 years old, and if I don't make a decision to do what I wanted to do for 50 years, then it's probably not going to happen. So that's where that is. P7 2017 says, every flying design has teething pains. The Osprey had a shaky start, but the people who worked with it love it. Yeah, good to hear. Yeah, man, we can do things when we get out of our own way. And I've often wondered what the world would look like if we could take, 50% of the people who are not pulling their weight in any way, shape, or form, and just basically just say, hey, we don't want anything bad to happen to you or anything. In fact, we're going to leave you alone. We're just going to drop the first stage and we're taking off. So we'll see. Anyway, thanks everybody for being here, and thanks for hanging in for all these years. And 26 is going to be a real barn burner. I really feel really good about it. And especially thanks to Jacob Belchek again for that really effective question, which has given me a lot to think about and a lot to talk about, which is really kind of what it counts. All right, so we will see you on Monday night for your Stratosphere Studio. Until then, happy trails, and take care of yourselves, and we will see you in just a few days, and thanks for being here.